With all the tools and all the distractions and all the social media and all the apps and all the responsibilities that we have in our life, is there a way to multiply time and to become more productive?
Yeah. Yeah, there is. So, I mean, this is what you just described was my life. I mean, this was pretty much like all the things we study. I was not trying so much to solve the problem for the world. I was trying to solve a problem in my own life. Just busy, buried, behind, overwhelmed, stressed, frustrated. No matter how fast you work, you just never feel caught up.
No matter how many hours you didn't sleep, you felt tired and you were working sluggish and trying to get it all done, everything.
Yeah, you just can't. There's this frustration of like, am I ever going to have peace? Like, am I ever going to have margin? Am I ever going to have space? Am just feeling like things are under control? And so we started looking at this and we started profiling people that at the time we called ultra performers, which were the top 1%ers in different industries. And
is this top 1% earners, top 1% accomplishments?
Yeah, I mean, just what it's kind of used that term loosely, but like, you know, if it's church leaders, it's large church leaders. If it's athletes, it's professional athletes. If it's financial advisors, they're probably top earners.
Sure.
So it's just from different walks of life. And what we found is there is a new type of thinker that has emerged that is, we call them a multiplier, because most people are trying to manage time, right? Like you even hear this, you go, I need to be better at managing my time.
Time management.
But you know, what's funny about that is there is no such thing as time management. There is only self-management, right? You cannot manage time. Time ticks on second by second. I can't fast forward time. I can't stop it. I can't pause it. And so what this conversation really about is managing ourselves, managing our decisions, managing our use of time. But even that is kind of a first shift that needs to happen. It's not like I'm this helpless victim that is subject to the world around me who is unfairly blasting me with all this stuff. No, you're in charge. Like everything that exists in your life, you said yes to it in some way. So it is your responsibility, and you created the problem, but that also means that you are in charge of fixing it, that you have the power to change it. But what we started to realize is that most of what people have learned and think about time management, I went so far as the opening line in my TED Talk is I said, everything you know about time management is wrong. It's wrong because we have been taught to think about time in a very, linear way. And the world today is much more like multidimensional.
When you mean linear way, do you mean focusing on our priorities?
Yeah, so a little bit about that. So if we talk, we love to take people on a quick history of time management theory. Okay, so era one time management thinking was very one-dimensional. We refer to era one thinking as efficiency. So that was the strategy, was I got 10 things on my to-do list. How do I crank them out faster? And time management and productivity as a body of work really develops, it comes on in the scene in 1950s, 60s. So, it's the manufacturing era where it's conveyor belts and engineering and just doing things faster. That also reflected in our mindset was, how can I be more efficient? Now, efficiency is good. All things being equal, doing things faster is great. The problem is that there is a point of diminishing returns to using efficiency as your only strategy for productivity.
Right.
Which is that no matter how fast we move, the amount of busy work always expands to fill the amount of time available.
Right.
So it's more like quicksand. It's just kind of like the faster you go or the more that shows up. Doesn't mean you shouldn't be fast. It's just not going to get you what you're looking for. Then, in the late 80s, Dr. Stephen Covey wrote a book that changed the world, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I'm sure you're familiar with it, and sold tens of millions of copies. And Dr. Covey pretty much single-handedly introduced a new era of time management thought that the world refers to as prioritizing.
Yes.
But we would classify prioritizing as era 2 thinking, which is still to this day the predominant strategy that most people use in terms of how they think about time. And so here's what prioritizing is. It's to focus first on what matters most. Super powerful, super relevant. Dr. Covey had this thing called the time management matrix that he explained of like urgency and importance, and basically he taught us to score our activities so that we could reorder them and say, it's not just about getting these done faster. It's saying, hey, item number 7 needs to be pushed to item number 1, which is valuable. And so that's super valuable. Prioritizing is as important today as ever before. But what I noticed in my own life, because I was a student of Dr. Covey and several books on time, I mean, there's no shortage of books on time management. There's no shortage of apps. There's all these tips and tricks and tools and technology that exist to help us with this problem of feeling so busy, and yet the majority of us are still overwhelmed.
Right.
So it's like there's something missing. And what we started to notice in these ultra performers that we now refer to as the multipliers is that they are doing a different type of thinking. It's like evolution. Like their thinking has evolved. For almost all of them, it was subconscious. And
they weren't even aware of it.
Not even aware of it. It wasn't something that someone taught them to do. They did it instinctively, like instinctually. They figured out, and most of them couldn't explain it. They couldn't explain it to me, and they couldn't explain it to most people if they said, how are you so productive, right? Like, how do you become a billionaire in 10 years when like most people work for 40 years and they can barely retire.
Right.
It's a different type of thinking. And one of the things, this is true in many areas of our life, the next level of results always requires the next level of thinking. So here's what it is. So era 3 time management is multiplying. It's not efficiency, it's not prioritizing, it's multiplying. And it's all based on what we call the significance calculation. So it's really, it's adding on, like Dr. Covey's work as an example. So he, presents this 2-dimensional figure like a square, where the y-axis is importance and the x-axis is urgency. But what multipliers are doing is they're making a third calculation, which we call significance. So it's kind of like if you were doing algebra, it would be the z-axis. It would turn the square into a cube.
3-dimensional.
3-dimensional thinking, era 3 thinking or 3-dimensional thinking. And so here's the difference. Urgency is how soon does this matter? Most of us live in a world of urgency. It's all about what needs to be done right now. Importance is different. Importance is how much does this matter? But significance is even different still. Significance is how long is this going to matter? So what is the impact of this activity in the future?
10 years out, 20 years out.
Even 10 days out, yeah. Right. It is breaking free of the paradigm of one day and instead thinking about tomorrow and the next day. And the significance calculation changes everything because this is how it's possible to multiply time. So I'll just tell you in one sentence, okay? So if you say, Rory, how is it possible to multiply time? This is the answer. So you want to write this part down. You don't want to miss this. The way you multiply time is by giving yourself the emotional permission to spend time on things today that create more time tomorrow. There's certain things you do right now that create more time in the future. That's the significance calculation. So when I say multiply time, people often think I'm exaggerating or that it's like a marketing hyperbole, right? As I'm sensationalizing a concept. When we say this, we're not exaggerating. We mean this literally. Now, it kind of fries your brain because you've been told your whole life, time is the one thing you can never get back. It's the one thing you can never get more of. And it is true that there's nothing that we can do, there's nothing I can do to give you more time inside of one day. So one day is finite, and we're all limited by the same 24 hours. which by the way is 1,440 minutes or 86,400 seconds.
Okay.
So I can't teach you to create more. I don't have control over time, right? There's no such thing as time management. There's only self-management. But that's exactly the problem, is most of us think about our activities in the paradigm of one day. We wake up and we say, what's the most important thing I can do today? And it's not that that's a bad question. It's just not the question that multipliers ask. Multipliers don't say, what is the most important thing I can do today? Multipliers ask, what are the things I can do today that create more time tomorrow? What are the things I can do now that make the future better? You're literally breaking free of the urgency paradigm of just what matters right here, right now, and you're introducing the significance paradigm of what is going to have impact over the long haul.
Right. How do you know which actions to focus on urgently that will have impact over the long haul?
Yeah.
When you've got everything significant.
Yes. So, well, there's a tool called the focus funnel
Yeah.
that we developed here to help people apply this. Yeah. So there's only one big idea in this whole conversation, which is spend time on things today that give you more time tomorrow. That's how you multiply time. Then you go, how do I do that? And there's five core methods, strategies. We call them permissions.
Yes.
Because there's an emotional side. What we've also learned is that most people treat time management logically, but it's actually an emotional conversation.
Yeah.
For most of us, it's not just our calendar and our inbox and our to-do list. It is our underlying feelings of guilt and fear and anxiety and worry, as well as ambition and our drive to be successful and feel valued and important and to make impact in the world. These underlying emotional drivers dictate dictate how we spend our time and the choices that we make as much as anything on our to-do list.
What do we feel most guilty about?
We feel most guilty
about not doing something that we want to do, about delaying something, about wasting our time.
I would say that guilt corresponds with the first of the five permissions, which is eliminate. Okay. So if you were to picture a funnel, okay, so if I were going to draw this out, right, like you think of all of the stuff there is to do comes into the top. And then the focus funnel is our attempt to create a visual illustration that codifies the thought process that multipliers go through intuitively in their own brain, so that the rest of us can kind of like see it and follow it. So the very first question is, can this be eliminated?
So give me an example of your life or someone's business or career or whatever it might be.
There's tons of things. I mean, in your personal life, I mean, I like the example of TV because it's a hilarious how people will, in the same dinner conversation, talk about how they're so busy and married and overwhelmed, and then talk about the 3 series on Netflix that they have binged in like the last month.
Right.
And
which took 20 hours of their life.
Yeah, and so it's like, okay, I'm not saying you shouldn't watch TV. By the way, I'm not telling you anything you shouldn't or shouldn't do. Right. I'm just introducing the framework for you to decide how to spend your time.
But if you're saying you're too busy and overwhelmed, check to where you're spending your time the most.
That's right. And Nielsen says,
if it's 6 hours on Instagram a day and you're not being, you're not creating something of significance and you're just browsing, or if you're 20 hours a week on TV and I'm overwhelmed and tired and exhausted, then just look at where you're spending your time.
Yeah. And Nielsen ratings, this is from a few years ago, but they said the average American watches 27 hours a week of television.
A week?
A week. It's a part-time job. So
27 hours a week. How much is that a day?
I mean, so 7 times, it's like 4 hours a day.
4 hours a day of TV?
It's like 4 hours a day. That's a ton.
That's a lot of time.
I mean, you could build a big side hustle in a couple hours every day, legit.
Even if you just cut half of that down and you watch 2 hours a day of TV and you spend 2 hours on your side hustle or something else, your health, your relationships, imagine the benefits you would have down the line.
So eliminate is the first opportunity to multiply, because anything I say no to today creates time in the future. How? It's preventing me from doing something that I would have otherwise been doing had I not given myself the permission to eliminate. Like had I not said no. So basically this is saying no. And people really struggle with saying no. In businesses, this happens all the time. People have all these, so, at Brand Builders Group, we do personal brand strategy, right? So we're coaching all these like people on building and monetizing their personal brand. Well, they have like 100 business models. It's like, I want to have a video course and a membership site and a live event and consulting. And I want to do keynote speaking and I want to get a book deal and sponsorships and brand deals. And it's like, when you have diluted focus, you get diluted results. Mm-hmm. So you have to, by saying no to some things, you power your ability to focus on the few significant things that will multiply time. So you have to say no. But this is something that people struggle with.
Yeah.
I struggle with it.
Mm-hmm. Especially when you get to a certain level of success where there's a lot of opportunities and cool things and exciting things and new shiny objects, we want to do lots of things.
Yeah.
High achievers, people that have gotten out of the weeds of their life and they have different problems, which are opportunity problems. Again, first world problems. It's how do you focus your time and energy and making the decisions that you want to focus on now for your future. And that is a challenge in just making decisions. Decision fatigue is a thing for people, and learning how to place importance on the things that you want to spend your time on is going to be key for you.
Totally. And a lot of people, the decision fatigue, what happens is it does wear on you. And so a lot of people don't make conscious decisions. So what happens is...
They make what? Emotional decisions, reaction decisions?
Yes, they're unconscious emotional impulses, right? And if you're not consciously saying no to the things that don't matter, you end up unconsciously saying no to the things that do matter.
What if everything matters to you?
So, that's what I said, actually. So so we were, this became the Procrastinate on Purpose book. So this was my second book. When we're profiling all these people, I was doing interviews, and I told one of the multipliers, I said, I don't like this one. I got to where I am by being a yes man, by like doing a lot of things and doing them well and like saying yes to meetings and meeting people all the time. And they said, Rory, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I was like, oh, okay. And here's what they said. They said, you're trying to go through life without saying no, which is admirable because you're a nice guy. But what you failed to realize is that you are always saying no to something. Anytime you say yes to one thing, you simultaneously are saying no to an infinite number of other things.
Yes.
So even when you think you're saying, yes, everything is important to me, no, nothing is important to
Wow.
you. Nothing is important enough for you to focus on. And you don't have a method for focus, and focus is power. So most of us are losing because we're meandering through a bunch of insignificant, trivial tasks, feeling productive when really we're just diluted.
Right.
So that's the first one, eliminate. Now, if you can't eliminate the task, then it drops down to the center of the focus funnel, which is automate. The permission to invest. And this is so powerful because anything you create a process for today saves you time in the future.
Yes.
Now, if I set up a process for it or a system, or if I write code, there's a lot of automation, like actual technologies and things that you can deploy. If I take the time to set it up today, then tomorrow the system or the process is doing the thing instead of me. So it's multiplying time. Mm-hmm. Now, here's the challenge, is that most of us are aware that those tools exist. But if you ask someone, Lewis, like if you ask the average business owner, or, whatever, achiever, or, somebody pursuing greatness, are you aware of tools and systems and processes and technologies that you could implement or deploy or improve inside of your goals that would automate things? Mm-hmm. They would all say yes. But if you said, why haven't you done it yet? What do you think they'd say?
It takes too much time.
It takes too much time.
It's easier to do it myself right now, just a couple minutes every day, as opposed to
building
figuring out the system, figuring out the software, learning it, going through the training, hiring someone, teaching them all the time and energy. I might as well just do it myself right now.
Bingo. Yeah. So it's like, it's so ironic because the two excuses we would use for why we haven't automated things is we would say either I don't have the time or I don't have the
patience,
money, the money,
the patience.
Patience we'll talk about in a second.
The money. I don't have the time or the money.
I don't have the time or the money, and it's wild because those two excuses we would use for not automating something are exactly the opposite of how it is when you make the significance calculation.
Because if you did automate, you would save time, or you would multiply time, and you'd earn more money from your time doing something else.
Yeah, so an easy example is bill pay. This is a quick example, right? So if you had 2 hours open in your day today, and I said, Lewis, what's the most important thing you could do today? You'd have a list of things that you would do.
Right.
And if I said, hey, I think you should consider setting up online bill pay, for most of us, we would be like, no, that is not important. That's not significant. That seems totally trivial. But if you look at this the way a multiplier would, you go, okay, if you spend 2 hours today setting up online bill pay, and it saves you 30 minutes every month from paying your bills in the future, then after 4 months' time, you will have broken even, 30, 30, 30, 30. You will have broken even on those initial 2 hours, and then every month thereafter, you'll get something that we call ROTI, return on time invested. Because now the system is doing the thing that you would have otherwise been doing. Another way that we say this, I know this is one of your favorite Rory-isms, is that automation is to your time exactly what compounding interest is to your money.
Right.
Automation is to your time what compounding interest is to your money. Just like compounding interest takes money and it turns it into more money. Automation takes time and it turns it into more time.
Right.
Just like nobody has extra money to invest. I mean, not nobody. There's some people are so rich it's like that's all they do. But the average person doesn't have, an extra 10 grand just laying around to be like, yeah, I'm going to invest it. Usually you have to sacrifice something in the short term. You don't go on a trip, you don't buy the car, you don't buy the TV, and that is where you create the margin to reinvest into, whatever, the stock market, mutual funds, like
real estate,
whatever you do. That is also how time is. Nobody has extra time to set up a system. Marketing automation is one of the big things we teach our clients. I know you guys do a lot of it here. We're experts in marketing automation. One of the reasons we became experts in it is we realized, oh my gosh, if I can build a funnel, which is just a sequence, a series of emails and, automating trust, basically, giving value to people, then that system basically becomes like an employee for me that works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's always out there. But I don't have time to build it. And yet, you only say that in the absence of significance. And that's what happens. In the absence of the significance calculation, we inadvertently overweight the urgency calculation and we doom ourselves to a lifetime sentence of always feeling busy because we're constantly making decisions only about what needs to get done today and never thinking ahead via the significance calculation of tomorrow. So a lot of people don't make conscious decisions. So what happens is...
They make what? Emotional decisions, reaction decisions?
Yes, they're unconscious emotional impulses, right? And if you're not consciously saying no to the things that don't matter, you end up unconsciously saying no to the things that do matter.